I think we're live.
I think we're live.
Welcome back to the Rebellion. Wife, how are you
Healthy
doing?
Rebellion Radio. I'm great. Thank you for asking.
That's the most insincere tone of voice I think you've ever used.
It's kind of
right
cheesy when you ask me how I'm doing, and we've like been in the same. We've been in the same house together for the last. We haven't left the house in a couple days.
Do like you do with other parts of our relationship. Just act.
Oh, Jesus, babe. I don't have a pithy response to you.
No pithy rejoinder?
No, nothing.
Well, that's okay because we have awesome stuff going on in the Healthy Rebellion.
We do. Let's do a couple of announcements as we kick this podcast off.
You're good at announcements. Okay. You tackle that.
I'll tackle a couple of announcements. Let's see. Today's episode is coming out on Friday, Is it the 13th tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So Friday the 13th
of March. It's
like
full moon, Friday the 13th.
Yeah, that was my mom's birthday. My mom's birthday, my Uncle John's birthday. Happy birthday, Uncle John. So anyway, our mobility reset, which is focused on cars and controlled articular rotations a la the Kinstretch methodology, functional range conditioning methodology, is being led by Sarah Strange of Basis Health and Performance, and that begins on Monday. No. Today, what day is today? Okay, I have you in the notes. We have this wrong. I'm reading it starts on Monday the 13th, but it starts on Monday the 16th.
Right.
Because this podcast comes out on tomorrow, which is the 13th.
Man, whoever put these notes together sucks.
We're a little confused. And as you'll hear, I was going to save this for the later on, but this is actually the second time we've recorded this intro because we recorded this entire recorded this entire podcast last week, but our news topic being the coronavirus. So much has changed in 1 week that we felt compelled to re-record this intro and the news piece and all of that. So, which is why things are a little jumbly up front. But anyway, back to my announcements. Monday the 16th, we're starting our cars reset. So it's free to all members of the Healthy Rebellion. So if you'd like to partake in that, we're going to be tackling joints from cervical spine to your toe joints over 4 weeks. And Sarah's going to lead us through a great program. So if you'd like to get in on that, make sure you join the Healthy Rebellion ASAP. That will be open for members until Monday. After Monday, it's closing because we like to do it in a cohort fashion and keep everybody moving along on the same page at the same time. So we're not going to let people join midway through.
No gaggers of lollies.
No laggard. Yep, exactly. Let's see. And then our next 30-day Rebel reset with a 7-day carb test on the end, that is going to start on April 20th. So that's coming up as well. So that's where we focus on the 4 pillars of health that Robb lays out in Wired to Eat. So we talk about sleep and movement and community and food, of course. So so that's another thing that's coming up. So another reason to jump in and join us in the community.
And again, membership to the Healthy Rebellion gets you access to these resets. So there is not an additional fee to participate in that.
Correct. And let's see, we're still looking into details, but one of our members, Nikki in Spain, we're talking about maybe trying to put together a Rebel adventure in the fall of 2021, taking on the Camino de Compostela in northern Spain. So that would be really, really fun. So we're looking at some fun stuff like that to do as a group. And today we actually had the real today, not the day this releases, but the day before, because this is the day before.
Because we're on the ball like that.
We're on the ball. We actually just did a live chat in the Healthy Rebellion about all things COVID-19. And that is the news topic du jour because it is the news topic. Yeah. So let's tackle that.
So we did a piece on this originally, and it's been interesting to watch this all develop. I guess varying degrees of, oh man, this is really bad, or no, this isn't that bad.
There's just so much hype. Is it all hype? Is it all just media taking things out of control?
And the media loves going crazy with things. If it bleeds, it leads, and all that type of stuff. So this thing's pretty perfect for that. It's an election year, super contentious election. So like anything that you can, there's a million ways that everybody can blame each other for the shortcomings of however this thing has been playing out. But I've generally been on the somewhat lukewarm side with this, where it's like, it doesn't look as bad as the flu and all that type of stuff. And that was largely what we talked about in the original piece. But then we've had some additional information.
It's been a week, and there's been some great pieces that have come out. One, which is this video that we'll post in the show notes, and we should also post that Medium.
You mean like
well.
all these things down here
Exactly.
in the show notes, wife?
Okay. Yep, all of those.
So really quickly, just going through this, there's going to be a video from SARS expert Dr. Hu, who is interviewed in a English language Hong Kong TV program, and it's very good.
It's like 23 minutes.
23 minutes, and it'll pucker your giblets a little bit. Like, he makes the case that there's zero innate immunity because this is a novel virus. We've never really seen it on a large scale before. So there's unlikely to be much in the way of natural immunity. The folks primarily affected seem to be older, already immunocompromised. Definitely any type of like lung issues are a big deal. And he makes the case that medical systems can get overrun very quickly with this. And so there's some need to slow the spread so that if medical systems are able to get adequate care to people, then the morbidity, mortality, although it appears to be higher than what it was initially being reported. And this is, again, it goes back and forth on this stuff. And the Medium piece actually unpacks this pretty well, which I'll get to in a moment. But he makes the case that it's technically a pandemic at this point. It's on all the continents except Antarctica. And a vaccine is 12 to 18 months away at the earliest. And the way to mitigate this and manage it is to minimize the spread so that medical systems don't get overwhelmed. Some of a good of this, I guess, or a fortunate thing here is it doesn't look like children are affected. And generally, if you're pretty healthy, you should do okay. But some people end up needing really dramatic interventions, and some of those interventions including intubated ventilator, treatment. And there's a limited number of those things, and it's very easy to have those get overwhelmed. There's a piece from a website, The Prepared, which is kind of a prepper website, but it was very, very well done. It's called A Framework for Thinking Through COVID-19, and so I have a link to that. Eli Parisi has an amazing... Eli Parisi has a great piece on Twitter, which I have a link to that. And it's 8 days of U.S. versus Italy COVID mapping. And it basically makes the case that the U.S. is currently in this very early stage in which the number of reported cases do not remotely reflect the number of actual cases that are out there. And then Thomas Pueo, is that how you, Pueo? This is a Medium piece which has received more than 7,000 views in 24 hours, 7 million views in 24 hours. And he actually unpacks in a really remarkable way how it can come to pass that we could have, say, like 2,000 reported cases, but there may be actually 120,000 cases that exist as a consequence of that. There's a couple of different ways mathematically that this can be backed into. And again, they make the case that containment and some social distancing and stuff like that are really going to be important. And it looks like places like Taiwan and Japan really learned a lot from their experience with SARS. And they made some interventions which flattened those curves and allowed them to stay on top of the medical care that they needed. And thus far, it's looking like the United States, most of Europe, places like Iran and India are not tackling this in an effective way at all. And it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary. Above and beyond, like for us personally, we had a conversation in the Healthy Rebellion today. I'm personally not afraid of dying from COVID, but I am concerned that the economic impacts of this whole thing could be massive, could be absolutely catastrophic.
Like we've seen not just conferences being closed, like Paleo has been rescheduled to July, and we'll see if that is still able to
still goes. Yeah,
it's going to depend on how this thing, the course that this takes, right? And your gig at UCSF was postponed. Lots of universities are moving to just online virtual education for the rest
yeah.
of the semesters. And then we also have a lot of people that are on work from home. So, and not all workplaces, you know, are suited to that.
Daycare,
but
like
and a lot of these
yeah.
retail places are definitely suffering right now.
And that's a whole other thing too. Okay, so they close schools, and then can parents work from home?
Right.
And not every job affords that. So
it's
the economic
definitely
impact
potentially
on this could be incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on that, anyway.
So I mean, things that people can do, and again, like literally, this is like in the last 24 hours, we read 2 pieces, and then more keep coming in where this is looking
far more dangerous,
far more serious than what we had originally thought, and which is why we're re-recording this whole piece. And you know, it's making us question. We have some travel plans in early April to go participate in the Straight Blast Gym spring camp, which we are likely not going.
At this point.
You know, because the main things that we can do is to not be in social. The main things that all of us can do, to the degree that we have control over where we go, like, is to not be around groups of people. So that if we, and the guy in the video, Dr. Hui, I think you said, made the point, like, we are all going to get this. Nobody has any background immunity for it. So at some point, everybody will get it. It's just a matter of, can you push that timeline down the road so that we don't overwhelm the hospital systems?
And the medium piece is interesting because it makes the case that if we do this effectively, then the morbidity, mortality, the death and illness could be a factor of anywhere from 10 to 1,000 times less than if we do this ineffectively. Mm-hmm. If the medical systems get overwhelmed, if medical workers get overwhelmed, like there's not enough masks to go around in the United States for medical mm-hmm. workers right now. And we've offshored all of our production. Manufacturing, right. Which is
and I forget which article made the case, like, it's an exponential problem, and in the beginning of an exponential problem, it seems like nothing's happening. And Rob, there's that who put out that great
Chris Martinson, and so
there's a great video.
I'll put a link to this in the show notes. It is a good one, and I shared it in the Rebellion. Imagine you're in Yankee Stadium mm-hmm. and you're handcuffed to the very top seat in Yankee Stadium, like the nosebleed mm-hmm. seats. Then down at home base on minute 1 at noon, 1 drop of water is put on home base. Then at 12:01, a second drop of water.
Doubles every
2 drops
second.
are put. And then at minute 3,
6 drops.
6 drops, and on
12,
and on and on.
24.
And how long do you have before you drown? And people are like, weeks, months, but it's actually about 12:45. About 45 minutes before Yankee Stadium is full. And what's really, that's kind of mind-blowing, but what's difficult to grasp is, I believe it's at 12:45 that you drown, but at like 12:40, there's only a few inches in the infield. Mm-hmm. But that's the flat part of this J-curve, and the human brain just doesn't deal with exponentials because exponentials don't exist in nature for very long. It's a bomb going off. It's a supernova exploding. It is the spread of a pandemic. And they happen quickly, and it typically alters the landscape in which it exists. And so I will put a link to that in mm-hmm. the show notes.
I think it's a pretty powerful visual. Yeah. And hopefully, like, us sharing this, like, people will also, like, if you have travel plans that are not essential, don't go. Like this is what we can all do. We're at like Yankee Stadium at minute 1 or whatever. Like, and it looks like nothing, and people might think, oh, people are overreacting. And again, we did up to 24 hours ago. But I think it's worth taking heed and using some caution here.
And lots of people have made the point that it would be far better at this juncture to look silly at being overreactionary than the catastrophic consequences of not. Mm-hmm. And if you guys have followed us or me at all, you know I'm kind of, lunatic fringe with some things. I'm always like, well, why is this happening? Is the government taking advantage of it and stuff like that? And I've had some thoughts around that. And I wouldn't be surprised if there is some opportunism that's occurring here. I really wish I had bought stock in Purell or something else 2 weeks ago. That I wouldn't need
toilet paper.
Yeah, I wouldn't need the like baseball game list. Mm-hmm. I would just go put money on Purell. But So some of my, I guess, kind of freedom-oriented, libertarian-leaning type stuff, yeah, that's there. But this is it's well established throughout history, like the 1918 flu pandemic. The places that intervened early, it dramatically altered the course of the disease. And the places that waffled or maybe relaxed strictures on social interactions early, they suffered massively. And it will really negatively impact the economy. If we do a good job on this, it's going to have a significant impact. If we do a terrible job on this, and hospitals are overwhelmed, we have doctors and staff members dying, and that's going to be a whole other layer to this. So again, use your best judgment, but it seems like hunkering in and trying to ride this thing out to mitigate this, the rapidity at which this stuff spreads is the way to deal with this.
And definitely check out all of these links in the show notes. They're really good, really well done pieces.
And, kind of a shameless plug for the Healthy Rebellion. We are hoping that the lifestyle and community features that we have there are going to help people weather this.
To the best of your ability to reduce inflammation in your body, to get enough sleep, to, do all of these things that all of you listening know you should be doing. Those are the things that can also shore up your immune system.
It puts you in the less susceptible category,
exactly.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've rambled enough. Let's just patch this into the episode that we already recorded.
Cool.
Okay, we got our t-shirt winner from our iTunes review, and this one was, I really liked this one. This one's from artful_Dodger_MKM, and the title is Holy Bird-Brained Bullseyes, Batman. This podcast is dope. I followed Robb and now Nikki since the early Paleo Solution podcast days, and I never tire of hearing him talk about all the matters in the health and fitness space. I'm a full-fledged, card-carrying, F-bomb dropping member of the Healthy Rebellion community, and I look forward to helping them reach their goal of liberating 1 million people from the sick care system. Party on, Garth. That made me laugh. Artful Dodger MKM, thank you for your review. Shoot us an email over to hello@robwolf.com with your t-shirt size and your mailing address, and we will send you a Healthy Rebellion radio t-shirt.
And you can't win if you don't play.
Well, this is true.
And playing is giving us a super awesome review. So,
all right. This episode of the Healthy Rebellion Radio is sponsored by Joovv. Joovv is the leading manufacturer of personal in-home red light therapy devices that help reduce pain, fight inflammation, so you can live a happier and healthier life. So if you're training hard and want to improve recovery, if you're struggling with pain or inflammation, looking to improve your sleep.
In particular, like we did a piece on this looking at folks that train in the evening and maybe find it difficult to unwind after that training. The red light therapy in the evening, there's not a ton of research, but good research that suggests that it could help you to ramp up melatonin production and, interestingly, like drop body temperature and stuff like that so that you can actually get good restful sleep. So that could be a really interesting way. I would almost file this under the hack category, even though I hate that term, but it is something that could be used in a very targeted way to potentially help with those problematic go to bed after like a hard.
Because a lot of people do. The only time they can train is in the evening.
Yeah, totally.
And most people have a hard time winding down after, especially if it's a hard training session.
That's why it's taken me 30 years to get a black belt in jiu-jitsu, because
you don't go to the evening classes.
Knacker me in the evening classes. Yeah.
Yeah. And even libido. These are all things that red light therapy can help with. And Joovv is your go-to for all things red light therapy. So go to joovv.com/Robb and get clinical grade power to help reduce pain, fight inflammation, and boost your libido so that you can live your best life. And that's joovv.com/ROBB. You ready for today's questions?
Hit me, baby, one more time.
Oh my gosh. So that song, we listened to it quite a bit. It's on our kid playlist. It's on the playlist that when we drive, and Sagan started swapping out instead of "Hit Me Baby One More Time," she started making it about our kitten, scratch me Marfie one more time. And so we have these whole like,
it's
this
pretty
whole,
good song.
this
Pretty good
whole
song.
alternate lyric. Okay, never mind. That was a total tangential. We have a question from Micah on how to offset the effects of long-term anticoagulant use. Hi, Rob. I absolutely love your podcast, and I have a question I was hoping you could help me with. I've been hearing a lot about vitamin K2 and how it helps move calcium out of the arteries and into the bone. My issue is I am on warfarin for life due to multiple blood clots over the past few years, and I worry about the long-term effects. My doctors believe the clots are due to my ulcerative colitis, which is now under control thanks to the GAPS protocol and now a mostly paleo diet. They're still unwilling to take me off the blood thinners. My question is there anything I can do to offset the effects of long-term anticoagulant use in my arteries and bones? I'm a 31-year-old male and healthy with the exceptions of the issues I've mentioned above. I lift weights 4 to 5 times a week in a bodybuilding type style.
Man, this is, I did a good amount of digging in this, and I found 2 papers that I linked in the show notes, one from 2009 where it was, where the title's Reduced Bone Density in Patients on Long-Term Warfarin, and it was more of a hypothesis paper. There really wasn't research done at that point, but it kind of made sense. In this story of kind of calcium retention and bone density and whatnot, vitamin D, it really enhances our ability to retain calcium, but it's fairly arbitrary in where that calcium goes. And so vitamin D absent vitamin K can end up in the arteries and enhance calcification of the arteries and whatnot. And so this is the other paper, which was in 2015, Long-Term Warfarin Therapy and Biomarkers for Osteoporosis and Atherosclerosis. And it makes the case that folks on warfarin long-term definitely have increased rates of osteoporosis, and they appear to also have accelerated atherosclerosis. What you could do in this scenario, the fact that Micah's already lifting weights, I think that that's a great hedge in this story. But there's kind of a reality that once folks go on blood thinners, it is a devilishly difficult and dangerous process to get somebody off. This would be something that you would just have to really communicate with your doctors about, and everybody needs to be prepared that there could be a catastrophic event in tinkering with this. And the fact that maybe the ulcerative colitis is dealt with now, then in theory, these blood clotting potentials could be, reduced, or maybe they're a non-issue. But it's a big ask to have a doctor go in and do this, like the way that, assuming Micah's in the United States, the litigious nature of medicine in the United States, the fact that following standard of care is the main protection that physicians have for protecting themselves from malpractice and whatnot. So, I mean, I could make the case that to the degree that there is some blood thinning need here, things like high dose fish oil, dialing down warfarin, being very careful about, how much vitamin K2 is in the diet. There could be protocols around that, but it's going to be a dodgy process. Mm-hmm. And what you're trading is some potential problems with osteoporosis and atherosclerosis long-term versus an acute problem of dying short-term from a blood clot. And I don't remotely have like a good answer on like the risk analysis there. Like it's when I think it through, I think that there's a reasonable case to be made that if, again, the baseline blood clotting issue has been addressed, that we should be able to make a case that this situation could be dialed down and titrated off. But again, this is going to be something that you have to talk to your docs with extensively. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised if he or she is not remotely willing to tinker with this, because there's virtually no upside for them. Mm-hmm. Like if you have problems from osteoporosis or atherosclerosis, it's going to be in 20 or 30 years, not today. Whereas if you have problems from tinkering with this stuff, it happens today, it happens catastrophically, and that's a big deal. So mm-hmm. I that's the best I've got. Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty. Our next question is from Gaju, the keto pooper, about diarrhea on keto.
He should get a t-shirt just for his handle alone.
Hey, Rob, I dig your content. You were responsible for turning me on to paleo. I've been doing keto for close to a year now. However, whenever the fat content in my meal goes up and there's some fiber present from vegetables, diarrhea occurs soon after. Unless my physiology is abnormal, I expected my body to be able to process the fat by now. Reducing the veggies or the fat that I add to my meals in the form of olive oil, duck fat, avocado oil, and so on seems to keep the diarrhea in check. But the calories consumed go down substantially. As an active person looking to make significant strength gains in the gym, this bums me out. Right now, I'm trying to see if the magnesium in the electrolytes I consume might be the culprit, but any leads you can provide would be helpful.
So I looked into the electrolyte that Gaju is
mentioned,
and I don't see any. One, it barely has anything in it, so I don't really see that being a problem. It's interesting because this sounds like kind of an IBS scenario, and it's. If we put on our kind of carnivore hat, and it's like, evil plants are causing problems in his gut. And that could be. There could also be like an underproduction of bile salts that are helping to emulsify the fats. And so maybe the fiber is mildly irritating, the excess fat is mildly irritating. And so you need a combo of both for it to really result in this scenario of pulling more fluid into the stool and creating this diarrhea scenario. So one spot to check would be something like the Now Food super enzymes that has ox bile with it, but you could use that plus a separate ox bile supplement and just see if that addresses things. And then also, just as always, keto's great. I love it. It's my preferred metabolic state, but why are you doing it?
Mm-hmm. Well, he says he's done paleo before. So one question is, did you not experience any of this on paleo? And it's only, doing the extra fat. The other question is, how much fat are you doing? Like, are you doing high fat keto, or are you doing kind of a protein centric ketogenic diet with fat kind of as a condiment? But I know he's also trying to make strength gains. So he's probably also trying to eat a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. But it begs the question, like, why are you doing keto? Do you just disproportionately feel better? Do you have great appetite control and stuff like that? And that's all compelling. But if there's not a big delta between keto and just kind of paleo, and you're not having disaster pants on paleo, then, kind of problem solved. So, and there's different things that we can do, like would sticking more of, say, a starchy carb-centric meal early in the day and then kind of mitigating the amount of fiber consumed later in the day, could that help? Like, there's definitely a lot of different ways to tinker with that. But for the first things that I would kind of ask is, why are you doing keto? And what's the upside there?
Especially if you had none of these problems just doing a standard paleo diet.
Yeah. But if keto is really, really compelling, then we need to look at the kind of two sides to tackle this. Or I guess really one side is augmenting digestion one way or the other. And so something like the Now Food super enzymes plus ox bile should help both in the general food digestion, but more specifically in improving the absorption of those fats so that they don't stay in the transit process and give you problems further downstream.
Cool. Alrighty, we have a question from Karen on how to make paleo and atheist friends. She says, hi, I've been eating a paleo-derived diet since 2011 when I read your book and lost 45 pounds in 4 months, and I have kept it off since. Recently, I've had 2 children, and I feel like it's difficult to live this lifestyle in the Orange County, California area with children. Also, my husband and I are atheists. My dad is a Scientologist. And I don't know if you've answered this before, but I'm curious how I'm supposed to meet like-minded people with a similar diet in the area. We already belong to a CrossFit gym, and they are predominantly unhealthy eaters and religious. Maybe I should just join a different one or find a meetup group.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
It's tough because, I mean, there are a lot of CrossFit gyms are there. There are a lot of religious people in CrossFit gyms. I mean, we aren't religious, but we have a lot of religious friends. And I think the key is finding people that aren't trying to convert you.
Right.
You know, there's plenty, and we have plenty of religious friends that
virtually all of our friends
yeah,
are,
but it's not a thing. Yeah. They're not trying to, you know, convert us, and we respect what their beliefs. And so it's a non-issue.
Yeah. I mean, people have asked us that about like moving to Texas. They're like, wow, man, isn't it super religious there? And I think maybe in some outskirts, I think other parts of the South, like, you know, when you meet someone, they may ask you, which church do you go to before they ask you your name. Like it's a real,
we have not experienced that at all here.
So this is kind of a tough one. Like one thing that I wonder on this, like in my youth, I was a very prickly kind of agnosto-atheist. Like I was sending out slings and arrows left, right, and center. And I don't know if I've mellowed with age or created some empathy, but I'm not antagonistic towards people now. And the fact that I'm not antagonistic towards people has oddly, like, probably reduced the potential pushback in that stuff. I'm not saying that Karen does this, but if there is that kind of, it's real easy to throw some sand in the gears and to create that little bit of friction.
Well, the same thing with food. Like, you know, it's easy to be like, oh, I don't eat, you know, like you can really make it a thing about the way that you eat, or you can kind of make it a non-thing by just choosing what, if you're in like a social gathering and choosing the things that you can eat. And if somebody asks about it, it's just like, oh, my body feels better this way. Instead of like going into the whole diatribe of like, well, we're supposed to eat this way and grains are bad. And like, you don't have to launch into all of that stuff. And again, I'm not suggesting that Karen is doing this, but I think to your point, there are ways of, there's plenty of other things to talk about, you know, so you don't have to make religion or the diet like the central focal point of the conversations.
Yeah, because we've made some friends here that are religious that definitely don't generally eat the way that we do. And we've had folks over for dinner.
And we cook what we cook.
And we cook what we cook. And they've loved it so far. And it's been no drama. And even if we hit somebody else's place, you know, I'm like, hey, I'm allergic to wheat. All the rest of this stuff looks great. And if there's nothing that actually works, then I just don't eat that day and I drink alcohol instead. So it's, you know, I think just kind of relaxing into the whole thing and, you know, having empathy and not really needing to make it a self-identification process. And again, we've been doing this for so long that I think that we're at a pretty comfortable spot with it. So it's definitely a non-trivial thing, you know, like cultivating community is not the easiest thing in the world to do. You certainly could poke around different CrossFit gyms. Like if there is a place that you're at least potentially likely to find somebody that's into keto or paleo or something like that, that's a pretty darn good place to, you know, a good whistle stop to make in the, you know, increasing likelihood. Like hanging out at the post office, probably not going to meet many people.
Or the DMV.
Or the DMV, like a low likelihood of success there. So I could make the case for just kind of shopping around the CrossFit scene a little bit. Some meetups are great. We'd love to have you in the Healthy Rebellion also. And we're starting to do some in-person stuff around that. But even absent that, a lot of people have reported that they get some really great benefit, even though it's virtual community. When you remove all the bullshit that's involved with like Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff, and you have a group of people, like you have a shitty day and you're like, oh, this thing happened to me. And people are like, dude, that sucks. Like I feel for you. If there's anything I can do, let me know. And that is huge. We still need this stuff in real life. We still need living, breathing people in our lives, but getting a little lifeline like that can go a long ways too.
Alrighty, it's time for the Healthy Rebellion Radio Trivia.
It's time.
Today's trivia sponsor is Drink Element. Drink Element is giving a box of Element Recharge electrolytes to 3 lucky winners, selected at random, who answer the following question correctly. Rob, what's one thing you would definitely do on a desert island.
Are you there?
Let's assume that I'm not.
That limits options, remarkably. I would definitely spearfish.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah.
You like spearfishing.
By hook or crook.
Okay. Spearfish is the answer to play. Go to robbwolf.com.
Do you not want to be on a desert island with me?
I didn't say that. I don't
I
want to be
13 here.
I am trying to keep it PG-13. I mean, we do have we are rated explicit, but we already get complaints about F-bombs, so we don't need to get complaints about
lecherous
other things.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay. Go to robbwolf.com/trivia and enter your answer, and we will randomly select 3 people with the correct answer to win a box of electrolytes from Drink Element. The cutoff to answer this week's trivia and be eligible to win is Thursday, March 19th at midnight, and winners will be notified both via email as well as Instagram, and this is open to residents of the U.S. only.
There you have it.
All right, our next question is from Tyler on something that I'd never heard of before called the Croissant diet. The Croissant diet. Is there something here? Hey, Rob and Nikki, I've been a show listener for several years now, and I always enjoy y'all's, yes, I'm from Texas, perspective on a variety of health topics because it's unique and usually gets me thinking. So Mark Sisson posted a blog post recently from a guy who did a so-called croissant diet for weight loss, which really boils down to maintaining a certain ratio of saturated and unsaturated fat intake and a few other things which he claims can alter metabolism favorably in terms of weight loss. He also asserts that it is an ancestral diet, aka the French, though really a rather recent one. My question is this. Is he onto something? Is there any substance or lessons that could be learned from him? Sounds like it was really satiating, which probably helped drive the weight loss. And if he is onto something, how could someone apply it? And especially those of us in whom high saturated fat intake seems to equal sky-high LDLP levels. Thanks for all y'all's work. It's much appreciated. Tyler.
This one was a goodie. When I first read this, I was kind of like, this is just going to be bullshit. And we have a link in the show notes to this website, fireinaBottle.net. And this guy seems very, very smart. It's the first time I've seen his work, but kind of the tagline is Fire in a Bottle, humans as oxidative vessels. So looking at this stuff from kind of like redox reactions and whatnot, it's really interesting. And it has been kicked around in various circles over the years that things like monounsaturated fats, which the interesting thing about this, and this is where this stuff starts becoming kind of, it provides a headache for me. In theory, olive oil is very high in monounsaturated fat, and within some circles, it's claimed that these monounsaturated fats enhance fat gain because of kind of the lack of oxidative signaling that occurs in the mitochondria, unlike things like stearic acid, which is a saturated fat. But where this starts getting really oblique for me is that most fat sources are a pretty good mix of fats. They're not just like purely stearic acid or purely oleic acid. There's kind of a mix in there. And a great example of that is a ribeye, which is something like 60 to 70% oleic acid. It's largely polyunsaturated fat. Anyway, this guy goes into all kinds of stuff. Like I had forgotten about Peter over at Hyperlipid, a brilliant guy that's very geeked out on metabolism and low carb diets, and he has a thing called the ROS, the reactive oxygen species theory of obesity. And basically the notion here is that if you pump enough saturated fat into your mitochondria, particularly the fat cells, that this will cause localized insulin resistance in the fat cells, causing them to not be able to uptake more energy. And so they will actually use their own energy as a fuel substrate or offload that energy. And it's fairly convoluted. And he goes through and makes a very compelling case around this. He goes from being pretty chubby to significantly less chubby. I'm honestly not sure what the real story would be on this as far as would this really peg out lipoproteins? It's a fascinating topic, but the interesting, this guy went through all the stuff and then he kind of wraps it up. It's a long post and it's definitely worth reading, but then he wraps it up saying, unfortunately, my life was turned upside down in mid-September and I've gone back to my unstructured mode. And at the moment, the holidays are upon me. So like, he had this success eating a croissant diet.
But he wasn't really eating croissants, right? He's just eating fat.
Well, he was making kind of croissants and pancakes and stuff.
So
like that.
so he's eating grains with it, like flour.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And he made, and somebody asked, one of the first questions he asked was, would simply incorporating stearic acid into a ketogenic diet work? Was one of the questions. And I think the guy's name is Brad. He said, I have no reason to think that changing the fat ratios in keto diet wouldn't work. And then it kind of goes on there. But my point here is that he did this intervention, which is kind of, I don't know, when there's carnivore out there and it's like, I was going to say they do this really extreme, monochromatic version of eating. And it's like I'm looking at Dr. Sean Baker's carnivore
book on the
book,
table.
and I'm like, well, that's kind of pot kettle black. But he didn't stick with it, for some, to whatever degree.
So he's not getting any protein.
I wouldn't
What
say
is he getting?
any.
What
I
is
think
he eating for
getting,
protein?
I forget it again. It's a really long article, and
Okay.
I read through it as thoroughly as I could. But it also
The cheats, I developed a system of cheats. The cheats were mostly for eating out at restaurants. Allowable cheats were steak, cheeseburgers with a bun, pizza, ice cream, margaritas, and burritos. That sounds like a shit diet.
yeah, and like I would just start shitting and never stop
Wow.
shitting.
I have to
this
say
thing,
though,
so.
the before and after pictures don't look very impressive
They're
to
not
me
super
because
stunning.
they're at different angles. I mean, clearly in the one on the left, he's got a little bit more, a significantly bigger belly, but
There is that whole deal, like he's got the high angle profile and like sucking it in versus letting it droop out.
I don't know
like
about these before and after pictures.
Yeah. It's not a keto gains transformation.
No.
We'll put it that way. So I don't know, man. Like who was it that asked the question? What was
Tyler?
Was it Tyler?
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, It seems really appealing that you just need to get the right ratio of saturated to monounsaturated fats and then the world is good. Or you just need the right ratio of protein to carbs to fat and the world is good. And it just doesn't seem like it plays out that way. I think all of these things end up being a scenario in which we generally limit food and palate options. And whether you're high carb or low carb, that seems to be the way to make things work. Although in this scenario, it's kind of sounding like there was still kind of a pretty mixed bag, but it's it didn't sound like there was soda. It didn't sound like there was a ton of sugar. Like take this approach and then drink some soda with it and watch what fucking happens. That's not going to end well. So I don't know. I'm not even. So the question there, like,
Is he onto something? Is
he onto
Tyler's
something?
question.
I think to the degree he might be onto something, it's that we have another way of kind of limiting palate experience. There may be something to this kind of oxidative priority or the redox consequences of saturated versus monounsaturated fat. I'm just really hard pressed to be like because there are people there are these studies that show that folks that ate monounsaturated fat tended to have higher fat gain. But when you really dig into these things, it's like, how good was the methodology and how were they tracking body fat? And like, what were there's just goes on and on and on. And it's so hard to imagine, like, how does biology work that way? That we need to be that specific about how we're eating, or we're going to, spiral down into this obesity cascade. That just seems kind of silly. And they do make an interesting point in this that 1970s France, like, folks ate a lot of comparatively processed flour, but they didn't eat that much sugar. There is some, but it's not the way. And people were absolutely not.
And they're not
drinking
eating
sugar.
it all day long either. Like it's
Right.
like a breakfast, and then they're having protein and vegetables for
Right.
their other meals. Like,
Right. And there was I'm blanking on the guy's name, but Peter Attia had the guy who's the fructose expert on his podcast recently. And this guy made the case that, when you drink fructose, it enters, or sugar in general, it enters the system so rapidly that it really alters liver metabolism in a significant way. And it happens transiently. So there's a period of time where your metabolism looks pretty screwed up. And the sugar producers have known this. And so the way that they do the studies, that they're like, look, sugar's fine. They just check at the points where the problem has already mitigated, but it's caused damage. It's caused alterations in your metabolism. And they run them in a short enough time span that you don't really see the problem emerge. But whether you're talking about Japan or China or France, these are places that have clearly eaten fairly high carb diets in the past, but they weren't eating a lot of sugar, and they certainly weren't drinking much in the way of sugar. And this is absolutely something that has changed. And although I know
and they're more active, and they're not spending. There's just a lot of.
There's a lot of moving parts there, but I mean, this just seems kind of wacky. And again, to your point, I didn't even think about it. Like, the results were not particularly impressive, just from a
from 8. It was 8 to 9 weeks or whatever. So I don't know. I think when there's other approaches out there that involve eating, like whether it's paleo or keto, where you have a lot more variety in your diet, or carnivore if you can't tolerate greens, where you get amazing results. And I don't know, I would rather eat meat all day than pancakes with.
I don't know. Pancakes are pretty amazing, but
I don't think I'd feel like shit.
Well, yeah, I know I would feel like shit. So, yeah.
All right. Our last question this week is from Laura on salt sensitivity. Question: I've run my DNA through a variety of tools: Strategene, DNA Fit, Found My Fitness, Nutritional Genome, and most recently a Viome gut biome test. All point to me being very salt sensitive. Being that I'm very low carb and salt sensitive, what sort of guidance would you give to be sure I get the right level of salt in my diet? I'm an Element subscriber and originally was putting a full packet in my water throughout the day, microdosing, but then stopped when I noticed some tremendous swelling. Ankles disappeared and I took my ring off. Recently, I've tried adding some smaller doses back in, but I'm nervous around pushing too much with my salt sensitivity. And she gives a variety of stats. She's a 45-year-old female, 5'8", 157 pounds, 18% body fat, quite active. Keto carnivore for 3 years, currently doing 1 meal a day.
So, man, this stuff, it's interesting because in general, the folks that are, say, like salt sensitive or sodium sensitive, hypertensive, you could make the case that that's generally triggered by like a hyperinsulinemic state. And so, and this is part of the reason why when folks go from kind of standard eating to a low carb diet, that they have a lot of diuresis, they shed a lot of water, shed a lot of sodium, all that type of stuff, which is generally good. I guess what would be interesting to tinker with, and you know what's interesting about this is that usually when people experience swelling, not always, but usually it's from too much potassium. Like inadequate sodium, excessive potassium. This is kind of one of the things that can, over the long term, be a problem. That's not always the case. Folks that are sodium sensitive, like they will notice that their hands swell up and stuff like that. But like somebody going on a hike and they've been low sodium throughout the day and they notice that their hands and feet are swelling, it's actually because of a sodium potassium imbalance and not too much sodium. So the best advice I could give in this scenario is to just tinker. I would be really interested in knowing what's your baseline sodium intake, what are the signs and symptoms of say, like, hand or foot swelling, and also what's your blood pressure. So I would be really interested in like getting one of these good but inexpensive.
Did she give her blood pressure?
I'm looking.
I don't see blood pressure.
But that would be something that I would be really curious about, because if you get a dose and we see a pretty significant blood pressure increase, then that's going to be kind of concerning. I think that either way with this, we just kind of have to tinker with the overall dosing. And also at the end of the day, if you're not experiencing cramping, lethargy,
fatigue, that's what I was going to ask. Like, are you feeling the signs of
really
being?
Need it. Yeah. So this is it definitely. I would make the case that the sodium and electrolyte supplementation is on an as needed basis. When we were doing our jujitsu stuff, it was 95 degrees, 90% humidity, and we went through a lot of it.
3-hour sessions.
Yeah, and we would do like 3 elements during that time a piece. So it's but day to day we might do 1 or 2 of them, you know, and then we just salt our food and we're pretty good to go from there. So if Laura's not experiencing, you know, again, lethargy, fatigue, cramping, then you may just not need that much. Like the background that you get just with your food may be plenty. Or maybe you mix up some elements and you split it into divided doses over 2 days, and that's enough for you. But
figuring out what level works for you, you're going to have to kind of test and tinker
with that, because clearly it's sounding like she's kind of an outlier in the way that she responds. But I would be really interested in knowing what her blood pressure is generally, and then if she gets exposed to some sodium, like does the blood pressure go up significantly with the swelling? Like these are just some interesting things that would be handy to know to help dial in what she's up to.
Gotcha. Okay, let's see. That was our last question for the week. Be sure to check out our show sponsor, Joovv, for your personal red light therapy device. Go to joovv.com/Robb. That's JOOVV/ROBB. You get a free gift with your purchase when you use code ROBB. Please share this episode. Remember, we've got 2 great resets coming up. The mobility one featuring cars and Kinstretch starting on March 13th, Monday, whatever I don't have it in front of me. It's that Monday. I think it's the 13th. I think it's the 13th. So be sure to sign up before then if you want to join. The 30-day reset is starting mid-April. And so for both of these, like if you need to join before the start date so that you can participate, because on the first day that the thing goes live, after that first day, we close it so that we have kind of a closed cohort participating, because it's never smooth and easy when people join, you know, a week or 2 weeks into something when everybody else is kind of already off and running and on the same page. So these things run as a cohort. So you can go to join.thehealthyrebellion.com to sign up for that. And what else, babe? Leave us a review, subscribe.
Join, share, that stuff. Yeah, we'll hump your knee mercilessly to do something. So, yeah.
All right, guys. Have a great week.
Take care. Bye-bye.